We're live? There you go.
All right.
We're
fantastic.
Live.
How exciting.
Exactly.
This
Good
is
to
great.
see you, Nick.
Same to you, Matt.
Absolutely.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion on SASE, the Edge, and Zero Trust. My name's Nick Enger. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at ATC. Along with me is Matt Douglass with CBTS. I've had the pleasure of knowing Matt 10 plus years now.
Something like that. Absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic.
I know.
So give me a little bit of background on what you do at CBTS.
Sure. Absolutely. First of all, thanks for inviting us. You know, it's we like being a good partner to you guys at ATC, so we appreciate the opportunity. I've been at CBTS now for, I don't know, 15 years. I think I've known you something like 12 years.
That's right.
Mostly on the sales engineering side. So I run a group of sales engineers that, you know, if customers or you guys have, you know, as a partner, you bring somebody in, my team would come in and help determine, you know, are we a good fit, those kinds of things. So it's been a great run here at CBTS. Before I came to CBTS, I had my own small internet service provider, and CBTS purchased that going back 15 years ago.
Yeah,
so that's kind of how I got here. Yep, exactly. I still live in Indy. So, yep.
Very good. Very good. Well, we're here in the CBTS live studios. I think that there's a couple million people watching on LinkedIn Live right now. I can't see the number quite clearly right now.
Exactly.
I
also have a big
thank
producer, too. I mean,
why don't we give a shout out to our producer
Lance,
here?
Show us your face there.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
All right. Lance will be the one who as we get questions coming in, he'll pose those and we'll answer. So, yep.
Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. Again, my name is Nick Enger. I'm CTO of ATC, Advanced Technology Consulting, based in Liberty Township here in Ohio. My role is actually twofold. My role internally for ATC's organization is that I handle all of our technology stack internally, all of our applications, all of our infrastructure, making sure that we are operating as efficiently, as effectively as possible. And externally, I'm responsible for our consulting practice. Our consulting practice has a team of individuals that are consulting hundreds of organizations across the country in our four core areas: voice, network, cloud, and security. We go very deep in those four core areas. And I would be, if you could, just please press along here.
Yep. Oh,
there's
should have that up. There you go.
Thank you, Matt.
Good picture, Nick.
Very good. Four core areas: voice, network, cloud, and security. We're an independent IT consulting organization and professional services organization. Not many folks out there in the industry can say both of those items: IT consulting and professional services. That means we're advising you on the services that you should be contracting for, but also assisting you with the implementation and the support thereof. We have an industry-leading CSAT and Net Promoter Score. There's no one in the country that can say that they're equivalent to us in those areas. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the ATC technology spectrum. This is all of the areas of our four core areas that we get very granular. So customer experience, super support, SaaS applications, security, mobility, cloud, connectivity, voice solutions. And we also have a hospitality practice that is more focused in hotel IT management. We could plus on, yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Again, kind of talking about our differentiators, how we go to market. We get as close as humanly possible to the client, getting a firm understanding of their investments in IT infrastructure and applications, making sure that we know them better than anybody else knows them before we ever make recommendations. Once we have that snapshot of what they have in place today, we do a really good job of creating that roadmap into the future of not just the immediate needs, but the needs of 1, 3, and 5 years into the future. We do a fantastic job of partnering with our clients to ensure that they're staying in front of that digital curve.
Let me add something here, too, because I've known you guys now for 12 years, right? And we've been in selling technology for quite some time. The need for consulting, I think, has never been greater, right? Because when we were doing this 10, 12 years ago, they were pretty easy MPLS networks back to pretty common data centers or headquarters. And the whole movement to cloud of applications, workloads, et cetera, is going to, is affecting what we're going to talk about today on the security side,
Indeed.
right? So the one thing I've been impressed with you guys, because I've seen you grow from like a 5-person shop to what you are today, is this consulting practice. So, I'll tell you, you guys do a great job that way.
To dovetail on that, Matt, it's getting more complicated.
Yep.
All of the pieces and parts that make up the technology ecosystem are intertwined now. Thinking
spread
back,
all over the place.
Just a couple years ago, we were talking about you had a phone system person
Yep.
or a team for the phone system. Now, the phone system's an application that rides on the network.
Yep.
It's no longer that we are siloed in these buckets. We are combining. Everything's consolidating into what we are today.
And there's so many
full
choices.
IT infrastructure.
Yep. And there's so many choices out there. That's the thing, too.
Well, look at this. This is a great example. This is Gartner's emerging technology roadmap. And we're going to be speaking to the security sliver of this roadmap. But just to be able to read this is the red equals a high risk of deployment within your organization. Green means it would be a low risk. The enterprise value is the size of the circle. So looking around the outside of this, you have the security framework, you have the digital workplace, IT automation, storage, and database. The list goes on and on here. The importance of this is it's not slowing down. It is speeding up rapidly.
It's never been more complicated.
You're exactly right. So today's conversation squarely around security.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about zero trust network access. We're going to be talking secure access service edge. And if you're looking on the screen right now, you can see that these are either in pilot or in deployment in 2022 going into 2023. So the time is now. Organizations should be evaluating these things now if they haven't already. Isn't that right?
Well, and COVID changed everything, right? I mean, you go back 3-4 years ago, people were talking about remote work, and then suddenly everybody had to go home. Now, people are starting to come back to the office, but it has changed where applications are, where people are working from. Even when people are coming back in the office, they're still maybe working 2 days from home and 3 days in the office. And so figuring out how to secure the desktop, the user, your data center, your cloud applications, it's gotten particularly complicated. And like this next slide here, right? The landscape is huge. Nobody can read this on the screen because there's literally this many names of things you should.
Look at all these.
Exactly.
It's amazing how this is transformed. This is the momentum cyberscape for 2022 going into 2023. This has morphed year over year, and it has become this menu of options, and it's so convoluted. The average IT buyer doesn't know how to evaluate it. And a lot of these different toolings are overlapping.
Yep.
There's no way to stay in front of this unless you're in it day to day. And even if you're in it day to day, it's hard to keep up with the 2,000 logos up here.
And that's the value proposition of ATC, right? Because you opened up and talked about your position in the marketplace as being that trusted advisor. We happen to be one of those vendors that you might bring into a customer, but you guys have got the expertise to understand this vast landscape, this big cafeteria up here of services. Indeed. Understand the customer's needs and figure out how to bring the right particular partners in that they need to talk to, right? Instead of, they want to take a look at, UCAS as an example, instead of trying to figure out which of the 20 different platforms, teams, non-teams, whatever, you're meeting with them, figuring out what they need and bringing in the right partners.
Exactly right.
And we've been fortunate enough, you asked us to join this particular group here or this event. We are a small part of the portfolio that you might bring. So I do have a couple slides, if it's okay to talk a little bit about what we do, CBTS, right?
Go right ahead.
So, some of you on the event here might not know, CBTS, we've been around 25 years. We've got a couple thousand employees. We do about $1 billion a year in business, and we have a whole group of managed services, really, kind of our strategic managed services that we deliver into customers, like you might bring us. What we've become known for really here is taking best-of-breed solutions that in the past you had to typically write a check for and own that equipment, figure out professional services to deploy it, these kinds of things. Well, more and more customers are saying, hey, I need this business outcome, but I want this delivered now as a managed service. I want you to take best-of-breed technologies and deliver it as a managed service, right?
It's too complicated.
It's too complicated.
To try to do it on your own and be the piecemeal solutions in.
Yeah.
I just did a post on LinkedIn this morning asking just that. What is the value of going into best of breed products, but doing it piecemeal versus a holistic approach?
Sure. No, absolutely.
It's been overwhelming that everybody's going to that managed services.
They want a managed service. People are buying business outcomes now, not particular technologies.
Well said.
We used to take a look at technology and we'd stack up this technology was this many features and this one was this many. We're going to buy the more features and I'm going to have my people figure it out and deploy it. Nobody's got time for that anymore. They want to understand what are the business outcomes being delivered, whether it's communications, networking, security, and have a partner come in and deliver that business outcome reliably with SLAs, et cetera, as opposed to trying to buy a stack of features and deploy those things. So
completely agree. How do you do that evaluation? Because there's so many on that menu, and you've narrowed it down to a handful of best of breed.
No, that's a great question, because we're honestly, it's almost a lead, and I ought to give you like a $20 bill here, because I didn't know you were going to do this. We are constantly evaluating these things. So CBTS, over the course of our 25 years, we first started out, there was no managed services. And literally we are now, like last year, 52% of our business was in managed services.
Wow.
So we're taking those technologies, figuring out how do we turn them into business outcomes for customers. Well, OEMs are starting to notice that. So we're right now, I kind of talked about evaluating things. We're in the middle of a POC with Cato about possibly bringing, it's an SD-WAN SASE solution you're familiar with. Zscaler's come to us. Hewlett-Packard, who we've always been large with, is making moves and how do they take their services out to managed service providers. So the other interesting thing we're seeing too is that these OEM vendors out there in the past almost used to ignore us managed service providers.
Right.
They didn't care about us. They just wanted to sell equipment and licensing in boxes. And they realize now that the world has gotten complicated. Businesses are wanting to buy business outcomes and managed services. The trusted advisor role that you guys provide is continuing to just skyrocket. More and more people are coming to trusted advisors. So these OEMs are starting to realize they have got to start packaging their services to be sold by managed service providers as opposed to their direct sales staff, because who wants to talk to a direct salesperson anymore?
Exactly.
Really?
Well, it seems as though CBTS has shifted along with the market and the industry
it's
overall.
Our whole strategic focus.
Because if you talk 10 to 15 years ago when you and I first met, everyone was buying independently. They were buying siloed products.
Point solutions.
Directly from the vendors.
Yep.
And now that's not the case, and neither is the CBTS model. We're providing that OEM through a managed product offering.
And it's a business outcome, because as much as Cisco might not like me saying this, since we're a decent Cisco shop, hey, if Cisco's not the right solution, we're going to bring another OEM in. Or maybe 3 years from now, somebody comes in and completely leapfrogs another technology. We're going to move forward delivering business outcomes. We're not wed to a particular OEM.
Exactly.
Neither you're about delivering
exactly
the business
the same
outcomes.
model.
Yep.
So I love it. I love it. Yes.
The last thing I'll show you here real quick, and then we'll start getting into some security stuff, is that I mentioned about our strategic focus in some product areas. This is a slide sometimes we call our 5 pillars. And it's really some of the largest, most successful strategic services that we can bring into customers. So right now, everybody's in this big kind of shift or evaluation of Microsoft Teams. What's that going to do, right? Because again, COVID, I think if you look at statistics, it was something like 30 million Teams users, Microsoft, before COVID, and something like 150 million or 200 million. I don't even know what the number is now. Massive uptake. Well, people have realized really quickly that I've got to figure out, am I going to continue to invest in my customer premise phone system? Am I going to continue to maybe invest in an existing hosted UCaaS provider I already had, or am I going to make that switch to Teams? So for us, Teams, our own UCaaS platform, because we've been a phone company for 20 years or whatever, that's been a very successful, these 2 pillars you see here. Now, we've also got a lot of customers, we've worked with you that also are looking at bringing in managed LAN infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Help me fix my Wi-Fi networks, help me fix this warehouse Wi-Fi problem, or help me fix these, or build kind of a branch or the store of the future that I could replicate 10 times or 20 times or 1,000 times. So you see this NAS category here. We've learned how to take both Meraki and Juniper LAN infrastructure, firewalls, Ethernet switches, access points, these kinds of things, which some of that's part of the security stack we're going to talk about, but deliver that as a service. So that's been real important to us. And then the whole SD-WAN fabric, and you've seen this, is we first started kind of just thinking as SD-WAN as an MPLS replacement, which it can be.
Right.
But all of a sudden, then we started thinking about applications, and that moved into cloud firewalls, and now moves into some of the things we're going to talk about today. So that's been part of our journey as well, as building more cloud security products and SASE products around our SD-WAN platform. The last part of this you'll see at the bottom here, and we kind of talked about that, is that we're in the business of delivering a business outcome, and that means you've got to have the right project management, the right design folks, the technical overlays to do that work, the right on-site delivery if you need it, day 2 support. So anything that we bring to the table for you and your customers, we bring a managed service as a full end-to-end experience. That's what we've kind of been known for.
That's one of the reasons why we like the partnership with CBTS so much is we have a 24-year proven process that we follow for all of our engagements, whether it's voice, network, cloud, or security.
You guys have been around 24 years?
It's amazing.
I had no idea. No.
But our process, we call it the Delta process, that's very similar to the process that you're outlining as you go through your evaluations for your clients. So we have a very hand-in-hand relationship together as we partner with those clients.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get into some security stuff here. Let's
dive right in.
Dive right in because we got a bunch of stuff we like to go through and kind of share some of our takes. So go ahead.
So I'll kick things off. So this is the NIST security framework. Everybody on the call should be familiar with it. And if there's questions along the way as we go through this presentation, please enter them into the chat within the LinkedIn Live. We will actually answer them live while going
Lance will interrupt us.
Lance will interrupt us and tell us we have some questions. So again, the NIST security framework, I wanted to bring this up because this is how we analyze cybersecurity engagements for our consulting practice. We always come back to the NIST security framework and understand where the security posture is for the client, as well as where the gaps might be for the client, and then what tools or products or solutions might fit the gaps within the NIST security framework. So
there's actually 18 different components to this NIST fabric, right? And we use it as well when we do some consulting. So you guys will come in and do consulting. Sometimes maybe you might even bring us a customer that says, please come in and do some pen testing, some evaluation of my network, of my people, and give me back a large human-produced report as opposed to kind of some computer pen test.
Exactly.
So we use the same framework and fabric when we do our consulting as well. It's really kind of one of the industry standards.
And we've had some success in that regard with CBTS, talking about on a lot of the front-end engagements, when we're going through that, we almost consider it a vulnerability assessment. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a pen test, that could be just a point in time, but a vulnerability assessment will tell us where those gaps are against this framework. And I really like that, and you guys have done a fantastic job.
I mean, we end up producing literally a 3-year plan of how are you going to address this with people, platforms, and processes, because it isn't just buying a technology to solve it. It's people, process, and platforms, and there are a lot of components, and it's usually a several-year, if not multi-year, constant journey to stay ahead of this stuff.
Indeed.
Yep.
And even with those assessments, what I've found is the cybersecurity insurance policies are asking you to fill out more and more information lately.
They're starting to demand technologies you buy even. We're going to talk about that.
Exactly. Yeah. So with those assessments, it helps you fill out that material that you need to fill in for the cybersecurity insurance.
Yep. All right, so let's get into a little bit of SASE here. So go ahead. You guys do a lot of consulting in that world.
Yeah, so SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, I feel like we need to define that. So the components of a SASE model, it would be the SD-WAN, Secure Web Gateway, Cloud Access Service Broker, Firewall as a Service, Zero Trust Network Access, and Centralized Management. Now, what's important here to understand, these are a lot of the pieces in part that make up the solution, but SASE is a framework. It's not a product. So what's important to know is that you can take existing investments into your infrastructure, what you have internally at your organization, and put it into place with a SASE solution, if you will, and then bite off pieces when it makes sense for you. So say, for example, you have firewalls with licensing that you can't displace right now. Well, we can still leverage those firewalls until that licensing comes up to be able to build it into that SASE model and then just check the box on the menu when you're ready for it. What's important about this convergence, as we had on the screen just a second ago, is it is the convergence of both network and security into one solution. And that's very important, similar to our conversation just a moment ago about voice being an application on the network. Okay, now we're taking security and then implement it into the network, as well as all the applications and where is everything housed, making sure that all of that stays secure as possible, but also enhanced as possible for that end user.
Well, you mentioned applications, right? That's one of the key points. We've got to understand where the applications sit today. If I'm a user, where my applications sit? Where am I going to be accessing those from, right? Because more and more we've got mobility. And so to be able to have the same security framework or fabric when I'm working from Starbucks as I do when I'm working in the office is a big thing. But then also applications are without a doubt moving away from typical headquarters and data centers into either, colo data centers or moving into SaaS or public clouds. And so that new framework needs to be able to handle that migration without an overhaul.
Indeed.
Now you mentioned earlier, and I've had this question before, of if I'm looking at new SASE or SSE solutions, do I have to, can I still use some of the investments I made? I've got a firewall that maybe I just bought last year, or I bought some cloud software. Those are one of the things, at least in our practice, that we talk about, sometimes even the concept of Franken-SASE. I think I've used this with you before, indeed. Right? Frankenstein was built with these parts of bodies, right? But when we come in, we're wanting to help deliver a managed business outcome. And maybe part of that business outcome today is we're using some of those components that are already in place with a plan for down the road. Now we're going to look at this. Now we're going to look at that.
It's that road mapping.
You have to.
What we're setting up now isn't going to be what's there in a year, 3 and 5 years down the road. Let's make sure we have that roadmap developed all the way through.
Yep. In fact, this next slide was actually kind of put in there to kind of talk a little bit about this. This happens to be a slide from VMware. We've always been a big VeloCloud shop. It's one of our key kind of SD-WAN components. VeloCloud's rather unique in that we can connect to, whether it's VMware, SSE components, Secure Web Gateway, whether we're connecting to Palo, Zscaler, Cisco Umbrella. We've got all these flavors that we've worked with customers. So this idea of meeting you where you are today with your security components, how's it going to fit into kind of a long-term NIST fabric, and how do we help use those components but help deliver managed business outcomes to you today and in the future? That's really what we're all trying to do.
So there is a component here, because you and I talked about SD-WAN many, many years ago. Yeah. We did that full evaluation.
7 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
So a lot of folks have deployed SD-WAN in their environments, or some version of SD-WAN, whether it was VeloCloud or otherwise. But how does that fit into a SASE play? Do I have to use the SD-WAN? Could I forklift that out and then deploy something different? How does that all kind of fit together?
Sure. It depends the technologies, but certainly, like some of the new SSE, if you look at, we went back to that one slide where we kind of showed SD-WAN is connecting the network and SSE is the cloud security components. The SSE platforms today are mature enough that we can connect down to existing SD-WAN fabric. So maybe somebody's already got, Viptela in place, or they've got, Oracle, the old Talari in place, these kinds of things. We can still connect those to SSE components and get some life out of that, if you would. Or vice versa, maybe, we're going to come in with VeloCloud right now. Like we've got a customer today that we're doing about 50 warehouses, these 500,000 square foot warehouses where we're coming in and fixing their Wi-Fi problems. Mm-hmm. They also then wanted to get rid of MPLS, and we put VeloCloud in place. But they were already an Umbrella customer, completely in bed with Cisco Umbrella, believed in the product, which is a decent product, don't get me wrong. We just took that VeloCloud to connect to their Cisco SSE components, if you would, right? So that's really about, you guys have the same thing. You want to do a consulting with a customer to find out where they are today, where are they trying to get to, and how do we help deliver those business outcomes? We're the same kind of thing. You don't have to rip and replace. CBTS comes in, and we're not going to ask you to rip and replace necessarily investments you might have made in the last year if they can fit into delivering the outcomes you need.
Yeah, you make a great point. That's the starting point in any of these engagements. You have to understand your tooling that's in place today. That's the first step on our Delta process. We have to understand, audit, and assessment everything that you have in place today, and understand where you're trying to get to before you start putting pieces and parts together.
Yep.
So we just spoke to this. We just talked about the SASE component versus the secure service edge, where maybe SD-WAN isn't a part of it. Maybe ZTNA isn't a part of it. Mm-hmm. It could be.
We're going to talk a little about that, because you and I have had conversations about ZTNA, so I'm going to bring that up. Yeah.
Well, let's go right into it. So again, secure service edge is a component of SASE, which is secure access service edge. Secure access service edge gives you the capabilities of intertwining your network between all of your locations and all of your data centers, all of your SaaS applications, and then securing and enhancing all of it together. Mm-hmm. Yep. Where does secure service edge come into play here?
So what's kind of happened, this has been confusing even to me originally when they came up with this name. It's really, I think that they've taken, I think of it, we had a drawing earlier about SD-WAN is, if you kind of think SD-WAN is the network edge to connect my sites together, data centers, and let's say third-party, like public clouds like Azure, AWS. So SD-WAN's kind of the network fabric. SSE, the secure service edge, now is that's the term being used for all the cloud services. So my cloud secure web gateways, cloud firewalls, CASB services, these kinds of things. Sometimes you'll see, DLP services come through that, these kinds of things. That's really this SSE security cloud now. So SD-WAN and the SSE security cloud kind of come together with a SASE solution. And a SASE solution could be one vendor, or we could be delivering a SASE solution using multiple vendors, or a SASE solution with something you've already got. Like I said, we've had customers with Velo Cloud we brought in as managed, but we were connecting to their existing Zscaler, and that gave them a SASE solution. So SASE doesn't always have to be from one vendor, but so SSE is the cloud security, SD-WAN is the edge, and then combine those together is where that SASE term came from.
So, Matt, there's a lot of organizations that are still out there on MPLS. And if I'm looking at this and saying SASE and secure service edge, and how do I get there, what would be the pathway? Say I'm still under contract for my MPLS. What's the pathway of me getting to that SASE?
Well, first of all, I think I think you agree with this. It's a common misconception that you have to get rid of your MPLS network. There are still many uses for MPLS or for layer 2 networks, right?
Indeed.
We've seen, we've got, 4 different regional bank associations that wanted a layer 2 network because they just weren't going to leave that, but they wanted to layer in internet and then put an SD-WAN edge there so that they could route seamlessly across either one of those, even if they lost their layer 2. And then at the same time, okay, we've got an SD-WAN solution, then what SSE cloud or cloud security are we going to connect to start to deliver this as a SASE solution? So SASE or SSE, or let's go say SASE, can be delivered whether we've got, with many technologies, some not as easy as others, but what I would consider your premium technologies, doesn't make any difference whether we're using internet, MPLS, or layer 2 circuits, we can still deliver that SASE solution.
So leveraging existing investments, but also giving you that additional functionality that you desire.
Literally instantaneous failover, even error correction across the layer 2 or MPLS network. There's technologies out now that can, they can literally, fix packet loss across an MPLS connection. So these are some of the things that we talk to customers. It's also, we've had questions in the past as well as when you're coming in and doing the SASE, you're going to move to cloud security. What about my data centers, right? Absolutely still a need for data center firewalls with particular use cases. If you've got data centers or headquarters where there are applications that need to be gotten to, either VPN and back in your network or customer-facing or vendor partner-facing applications, we've got to keep those up and running, right? Those usually still have customer premise firewalls in the data center. Although I will tell you, we are seeing more and more organizations. I was just talking to one this morning, a 300-person headhunting firm out of Chicago with 3 locations, successful growth pattern. Everything they do is software as a service now. They have literally no applications on site anymore.
It's just a different use case. Yeah, it's a different use case in each organization's different.
Yep.
And the evaluation is different. The decision criteria of what solution to go with is different. There's no cookie cutter solution out there. And I think that's what's most important here is there isn't a cookie cutter solution. We need to make sure that we're customizing solutions based on the requirements of the client and existing investments.
It's not a rip and replace.
Agreed.
And that's, you've heard that though, because there have been SASE stories or people come in and it's a rip and replace, and that's not what it is. So.
Yes.
Hey guys, I have a question that came in.
Sure.
In the world of work from home, employees can take home their devices, for example, company laptops, et cetera, to public areas such as Starbucks. How do you help secure these endpoints into 2023 and beyond?
So whoever sent that to us, we're going to also send them $20 because the next slide was literally this. So go ahead, Nick.
So we'll start off with just defining XDR. This is detection and response regardless of the endpoint. So I think the question was pertaining to work from home environments.
How do you protect them from Starbucks when they're working there?
Just a generalization of mobilizing our workforce. So extended detection and response is just that. We're putting agents on the desktop, wherever they might be, to provide that added layer of not only management of that device, but also security of that device. Oftentimes we're calling that a software-defined perimeter, and then we can create geo fences around certain locations that we know they're not going to be logging into, or different tool sets that they shouldn't have access to while they're at Starbucks. We want to make sure that we really hardenize that endpoint, and that's what XDR is going to provide us. But on the backside of it, all of the telemetry from that endpoint, all the security infrastructure is going to be backhauled to a SOC as a service, or a SIEM,
Cloud
which would be an
infrastructure.
event management system. And that will be managed by a third party or potentially internally.
Yep.
Anything more to add there?
Well, the old world was I put a good antivirus on my laptop, right?
Yes,
And made sure
and
that,
maybe a VPN.
That's right. But the new world is I want a piece of software, whether you call it EDR, whether you call it XDR, I want a technology that basically has machine learning at a cloud level, knows what I normally am doing. Like in my case, I think I work pretty hard for CBTS, but if you ever saw me try and get into network resources at 2 a.m, that is not me, right? I don't do that, right? The same thing is all of a sudden, if I'm working from Indianapolis today and literally 30 minutes later I'm working from Denver, something's not right there, right? So these new technologies, first of all, have some machine learning and AI about my normal behavior.
Right.
They also have the ability to even mitigate problems, right? So that if all of a sudden a piece of software comes in and starts to change registry entries, these kinds of things, and I'm not an EDR, XDR expert, let's say, how it actually works as far as the coding, but it can tell normal patterns and even start to shut down and mitigate these things. So it's a whole nother level of technology of being able to understand and control the behavior of endpoints and even servers. And there's names out there like CrowdStrike. There's some very interesting new technologies out there that we're all starting to head towards. I did
just do a LinkedIn poll, since we're doing this on LinkedIn Live. I did a LinkedIn poll on the top tier EDR providers out there, thinking that I'm going to learn something. It's going to be SentinelOne or it's going to be CrowdStrike, and was overwhelmingly even across the board. That the top 5 vendors are all even.
And who was that? Defender, CrowdStrike,
I
SentinelOne?
have to go back and look.
But I mean, those are even I tell you, the Microsoft security story is completely changing.
Every day. Every day it's something new.
Well, and literally, call it again, 3 years ago, nobody thought of Microsoft as a security endpoint product, right? And their endpoint protection now, their
Microsoft Defender,
management, et cetera, tools, that's coming along as well. Yep.
Yeah, the constraints that you can put on Defender has changed within a year, that it is 10 times what it
People
was
actually
a year
consider
ago.
that now. Yep.
It's unbelievable.
Hey, I have another question that came in here, so jump in. So circling back to the SASE conversation that you were having, this person's saying, I am moving all my applications to the cloud. Why consider SASE?
Sure, absolutely. Again, goes back to control, right? If we're talking about moving all my applications to SaaS, in the past, I'd log in with my username and password, right? And that was good enough, right? That's not good enough. I need multi-factor authentication. We're going to talk a little bit about zero trust. The next generation SSE platforms are then incorporating MFA. They're understanding the use patterns. They're actually keeping track of documents coming out for data loss prevention. And so it's really about, even Salesforce does a great security job, or Office 365, but I better have add-ons that talk to their APIs, that take a look at data coming out, in and out, understand when I'm logging in, how I'm logging in, these kinds of things. So these CASB overlays, these SSE overlays, help secure even SaaS applications better than just those vendors.
Yeah, and that's the security side of it. If we're taking it from the SASE and SD-WAN side, we're actually enhancing each of those applications to perform better than if they were just standing on their own.
Some of these technologies absolutely have that. There's cloud gateway technologies that can actually perform some packet repair and mitigation. There's cloud technologies that when I'm working from an office, if I lose one connection, that even TCP session can roll over instantly and keep that application up and running. So there's a lot, again, going back to that discussion of where are your applications today? What are the most critical ones? What's it mean to you for downtime on those things? And what's the fabric we're going to help design to give you those business outcomes? Yep.
Great question. Let's keep them coming. Please enter the questions into the chat on LinkedIn. We'll keep going with the conversation. So managed detection and response.
Kind of goes right off the XDR,
We just talked about XDR.
Yep.
So this is taking it to the next level. Now we're We're analyzing what's going on within the network. We're analyzing the endpoints. Give me your take on MDR.
It used to be good enough, right, to have a firewall at the edge of my network and to have antivirus on my laptops. And we all thought we were protected, right? Now I need these additional tools, CASB, I need these additional tools of XDR, but now I need people to look at panes of glass and understand what's going on and understand these alerts coming out, because alerts come out, some of them might be critical, some of them might not be critical. When they're critical, stuff needs to happen quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Servers need to be shut down, endpoints need to be shut down. If something terrible happens, risk needs to be mitigated, right? We need to be opening up bridges immediately to start to then do that remediation, do that repair. So the idea of MDR now is to have instead of you building out your own SOC with your own staff, 1,000 person or even a 5,000 person company just simply doesn't have the wherewithal and the money, even to be able to access the talent to build their own 24/7 SOC. So these MDR services now are about a 24/7 SOC using all the next generation available tools to gather information from your security interfaces, alert on those things, and help, if God forbid something happens, mitigate those problems.
Exactly right. So it's ingesting from multiple areas within the organization.
Whether there are tools or not. When we do our MDR services, maybe you're going to get our XDR services along with our MDR, but we're going to be taking syslog feeds and other feeds from all sorts of places in your environment. Yep.
Yeah, so we hear from our clients, or oftentimes we'll hear from clients that, we have a SIM. We have a SIM. We got that covered. And we read those logs. Never. And even, typically, right, you might take your entry-level person and put them in managing. It's like patching. Sure. I think we got a slide on patching. Patching is now becoming a security event. It used to be we took our entry-level person, put them on patching, and we hope stuff got patched properly. Well, that's not the case anymore. So MDR now has become, in fact, we've even seen this become a requirement with cyber insurance. Mm-hmm. Cyber insurance is saying you have to have these kinds of tools. You need a third-party backup on your MDR service. And even cyber insurance saying that you need to have audited disaster recovery and backup plans as well. Incident response plans.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. It's a big deal. So, all right. So you mentioned ZTNA earlier, right?
Yes.
And we've had fun talking about ZTNA because some people kind of, really kind of the question comes about is, what is ZTNA?
Yeah,
right?
Well, it changes daily.
Well, it does. But so yesterday morning at 7:30, right? I live in Indianapolis. I came over this morning, but I'm thinking, all right, let's ask ChatGTP.
Okay.
Right? Everybody's talking about ChatGTP. So yesterday morning at 7:30, I say to them, I ask, is ZTNA a point solution or a framework? And this is what I got back from ZTNA, that it's a security framework rather than a specific product. It aims to provide secure access to resources from any location, any device, anytime. Multiple products and solutions that implement the ZTNA framework are needed, called cloud-based, et cetera. So I know we had the following slide right here we're going to talk about, but yesterday I'm like, let's just see what ChatGTP. Everybody claims ChatGPT is going to take my job pretty soon, right? Or,
I think it already did. It just
there you go. There you go. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about that, because there's been, I think, some confusion in the industry, because there's certainly OEMs and providers are like, buy my ZTNA product.
Yes.
And my contention is,
I cringe every time I hear that.
It's not a product.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It is definitely a framework. I mean, you've mentioned a couple times on how you do that evaluation. What applications do you have? Where do they live? Mm-hmm. How do you access them? Who's accessing them? And why do they need access to them?
Yep.
Well, first and foremost, we need to know who the heck these people are that are accessing them and which applications should they be accessing. Yep. A lot of that goes down to that identity access management, understanding who these individuals are, having that really shored up. So anybody that's on that pathway to ZTNA, you need to make sure that you do the full application evaluation as well as that access management policy.
It's the key part of it, right? So this identity access management and MFA, right? Then the tools that sit the EDR, XDR, mm-hmm. I've got to be able to have those things on those servers and gather that. I've got to be able to have things in the cloud, the CASB kind of data loss prevention. Yes. And I've got to be able to then have the SASE overlay and even VPN. I think there's some argument about whether VPN is it counts or doesn't count in ZTNA. But for us, it absolutely is a framework. And in fact, I talked about our kind of managed security consulting. We've now even expanded that to a ZTNA readiness consulting. So we'll come in and spend literally 20, 30 hours with you and your team going through the tools, the people, process, platforms you've got, and come back with a document that says, okay, if you want to get to this kind of ZTNA level, which is our interpretation, there's not really technically a ZTNA, document like NIST, let's say, but if you want to, get to this ZTNA level, here's the things you've got to do. So we're even seeing that added into our consulting now.
So if we were talking on the technology pendulum, SD-WAN, we were talking about, you and I were learning it really heavy 6 to 8 years ago, right? So 6 to 8 years ago, that was on the bleeding edge. And now SASE is kind of that bleeding edge. Where does ZTNA fall?
It's still completely brand new, right?
Brand new.
Completely.
ChatGPT barely knew it.
That's right. Exactly. No, I mean, because the idea, I mean, if you literally go back to this, right? The idea that you're going to secure access to any resource from any location on any device at any time.
It's very complicated.
It's incredibly complicated. There is no one complete platform to do it, and you need to put together a long-term plan to do that with a variety of different technologies. And it's all about mitigating risk because something's going to happen to you. Mm-hmm. But these kinds of tools in the right place are going to limit that damage to this box or
this silo,
this VLAN or this silo, as opposed to a much larger,
That's where we're heading. That's where we're heading. If we can get it down to the individual, that's where we're the most secure.
But even then, we've seen organizations say that even as I do my best work, the stuff's going to hit the fan, all right? And I better have the right backup and disaster recovery plans. And that's become more important even because, again, I go back 4 or 5 years ago, nobody, particularly a company 1,000 to 5,000 employees, nobody 5 years ago wanted to buy any managed security services. Yeah. Everybody you talk to with 5,000 employees knows they have to buy some managed security service from somebody.
Agreed.
5 years ago, everybody said, I got a backup. So now people are like, I need to talk about what am I really doing with my backups and DR plans.
You bring up a fantastic point. So ATC's consulting practice focuses on the 500 to 5,000 employee grouping.
Yep.
And that has shifted. What you just mentioned was managed security offerings was for the 5,000 employees and up.
Nobody thought about it
5-6 years ago.
Absolutely.
Nobody was buying it under that.
Yep.
What has shifted, and I think CBTS is following this shift, is we need to bring that managed service offering down to the 500 or maybe even below, maybe 100 to 5,000 employee organizations where we can really enhance their security posture and making sure that they're taking advantages of what enterprises were purchasing 5 to 6 years ago, but in a more scalable format.
They have to. There's just no choice. You could be because a company of 500, 1,000 employees just simply cannot acquire and maintain the depth of practice and tools that these managed services can do. It's kind of like the journey of Microsoft, right? We're all moved to Office 365. We're going to write a check to Microsoft till we die. Right?
Yeah.
And I think even the managed security is going to become part of you're going to budget for it on a per user basis as you build your business as it goes forward. It's one of those things.
Is that where we're getting to? Is everything as a service?
I don't think there's any question. It's everything's as a service.
So we're getting to the point where we add an FTE, we know exactly what the cost is for their tooling.
I literally had this goes back about 18 months ago. It was post-COVID, talking to a customer about how you were going to look at Teams. Because if you remember back in the day, Microsoft Teams, if somebody came in and did manage Microsoft Teams, you might buy concurrent calls and then what was the user license?
It was a nightmare.
And this CFO basically looked at us across the table and says, I don't want to hear anything about having to capitalize any equipment, figure out concurrent calls, give me per user because I can put per user in a spreadsheet. And I think that's where we're all headed towards. Yep.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. Yeah, and another question come in.
Sure.
Do you still see the need for MPLS or Metro E when it comes to SD-WAN and SASE? Why would someone use SD-WAN, SASE with MPLS?
Sure. I'll give my 2 reasons, Nick. Tell me if you agree with this. One is because they're emotionally not ready to leave it. They just like, when I talked, like I mentioned that we had a couple of, I think like 4 credit unions, banks, small kind of 20 to 50 location banks. They are simply not emotionally ready to ever get rid of their layer 2 network right now.
Okay.
Right? That's one. The other one is even in MPLS takeouts, there still are times where maybe all the branches go completely to internet, but we're keeping MPLS or layer 2 networks between headquarters, data centers, distribution, because there are some applications that still could benefit by shaving 10 or 20 milliseconds of latency compared to internet access. So there's some application needs sometimes around keeping MPLS for particular locations. There's emotional needs sometimes for people to keep that. Those are kind of the two big things that I've seen.
I would agree with that. So on the second point there, we've seen it go from 100 meg or 1 gig MPLS and maybe right size down to 20 or 50 megs
for
MPLS for that, that really ultra latency latency-sensitive application.
No, that's a good point.
The other application might be, and hypothetically, across the pond. If we're going international, there are use cases there where going across the public internet for SD-WAN on a latency-sensitive application might not be the best.
No, there are some SD-WAN SASE solutions out there that have either their own private network.
And they've even solved for it, to your point.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
No, that's a good point. I did want to bring up, and we kind of talked about, one of the reasons people were going MDR or some of these services because they simply can't staff for. They don't have kind of the depth they need. We have also seen, I throw this assessments and patching up, we've also seen a big uptake from us on managed patching services. And the shift really, again, I always use this analogy like 5 years ago. 5 years ago, let's say, patching was was kind of the responsibility of the IT shop. Mm-hmm. The guys who kept track of the servers and laptops, they're the ones who have to worry about patching. Now, patching has become so important that it's becoming under the under the watchful eye of the security folks. So, as an example, we got a big 20,000 seat UCAS customer we're in the middle of helping right now. That's a hospital, and they came to us basically as we're in the middle of this process. We're about 12 months into deploying with them. And said, all right, what do you guys do on patching? We have like 150,000 devices that we're using our normal patching stuff, and we're getting about 65 to 70% success rate on patching. And that's not, we just can't do it. So we came in using some tools from like BigFix and Tenable, where we came in and gave them a monthly service. Over the course of 3 months, took their patching from, call it 70% to 97%, and found some 500,000 vulnerabilities or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we've seen an uptake now as we've gotten this message out to our customer base of people wanting some help on the patching side. So I'm curious, are you guys seeing anything?
We're seeing it across the board. Yes, okay. That is the piece of IT that people don't want to let go, but it's almost necessary. It's that tier 1 or below type help desk work where it's not mission critical to the business until it's mission critical to the business, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's easy to say, yeah, we pushed out that patch, we had 76%, we'll try to get to the remaining 24. In reality, we want to push that to 100% every time. Why wouldn't we just have somebody do that on our behalf?
Yeah, I mean, because it's going back to that, how many people I employ in my IT staff, patching has become so important, but I really don't want to put $150,000 a year person or $20,000 on patching. So I put my new person who came in at 60, but they're really not so suddenly now this becomes delivering a security business outcome. Used to be, it was kind of like, we got to patch. Now it's a security related to security business outcome that we've seen on the patching side.
Indeed. And we talked about vulnerability assessments earlier. I think that's almost the entry point into these engagements on cybersecurity and understanding the current framework. We have to understand holistically where the gaps are before we can solve for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. We've kind of got a last slide here to kind of wrap up. And so we'd kind of task each other to talk about, so what are our recommendations, right? What are the big things you need to think about? And I'd throw some things down here.
This first one, this is driving most of the small and mid-market to do things within the security frameworks. Yep. Because if you talk 3 to 5 years ago, they weren't checking the boxes on the cybersecurity insurance policy. Now they have to, or they're either not getting insurance or their premiums are double. Mm-hmm. So understanding your cybersecurity insurance and compliance requirements are going to be mission critical going forward, especially for that small to mid-market.
Yep. And I think, what do you think about this is that, are you seeing a shift now as people look at security? Because I think we certainly are, is that they're starting to not think of it as a win, but they just know it's going to happen, right? It's not if it's going to happen to me, it's when it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic right now in the industry. I would say in the small industry, they still have the mindset, it'll never happen to me. What do they want from me? Right? Even Joe's Plumbing down the street, they get a compromise or some type of event happens in their organization. It could be mission critical or completely detrimental to their business. But the mid-market is now adopting what I think is above and beyond what the cybersecurity insurance policy states. They don't want to be at risk anymore, and they're willing to invest into it. Because
they start to understand it's about brand. I think I had a piece down here about brand. It's about, even the C-levels. Sometimes we see folks kind of at the director or IT level who have to start educating the C-level about the risk.
Yeah.
But I think organizations are starting to understand that this is a brand issue, and it's an issue that I have to start thinking of as a program and not a group of point solutions. We've been talking about that through the whole thing here, is that our job as consultants is to help deliver business outcomes for you. What are the security business outcomes you'll want to look for? Because just simply trying to go to Google and find the best point solutions will not deliver you a program.
There's a Gartner report for that.
There you go.
You just check the box. Just check all the Gartner reports.
There you got it. We'd mentioned this earlier, thinking in more detail about your backup and DR. And again, I know, oftentimes IT's like, yeah, I've got that. I back everything up. But it's now becoming a cyber insurance responsibility. People are starting to actually audit those things related to cyber insurance. And we're even seeing cyber insurance start to talk about patching. So, really, I think the punchline to the end of this is that our organizations want to be partners. We want to come in and do that consulting. We don't want to come in and just rip and replace. And we want to find out, what are your applications? What are the platforms you're running those on? How do you need help operating those things? And what are the business outcomes you're looking for? And that's certainly what we try to do on our side.
We've seen across the industry an opening up of showing what tool sets they have in place today versus in the past, just tell me what your product is and I'll see if it's going to be a good fit for me.
Yep.
That's not how we can operate as an industry going forward. We must dive in deep, and you got to trust your partners and get in bed and make sure that it's going to be the right fit for the overall organization.
Yep, absolutely. We have any other additional questions or anything?
No, we do not. I have no other questions.
Well, fantastic.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for
this
is always fun.
Absolute blast. Absolutely.
And I appreciate the partnership with CBTS, and looking forward to continuing it long into the future.
You got it. Come screaming for anything. Thank you, Nick.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you, everybody, for attending.